Delighted to be here today with Maeve Haran, and we're featuring the Greek holiday. So if I can just get that in focus, published by Pan Macmillan, and I had an absolutely lovely time travelling to Greece, to the Greek islands, and I gather that Zanthos and Kyri were actually inspired by visits you'd had to Milos and to Lindos on Rhodes. Tell me more about that.
Well, it gave me the idea in the beginning is that it was like the autobiographical element is that when I was 18 and it was a big adventure, I went to the Greek islands with friends, and we started off on Lindos on Rhodes, and a friend of my brother's called Hairy Richard, isn't that wonderful? That tells you a lot about the era, had rented a house there, and we stayed with him, and Lindos was tiny, I mean completely tiny. And I try and evoke that in the book, beautiful and tiny. And then we went on our way back to Athens, and my friend had food poisoning. And this tiny little boat came to get us, real puttered up, and took us to this island, which was unscheduled, called Milos, which, and we stayed there for sort of a week, 10 days while my friend got better. And I used that in the book, because this is a kind of wonderful, because unfortunately, Lindos is beautiful still, but it has suffered from the cruise ship invasion, which so much tourism around there has. And it is really busy. So from 9 o'clock in the morning, there are people with umbrellas saying, "Follow me," and in German. And it's just is different. You can find elements that are still the same, but it is not what I remembered. So I was able to use that in the book, and then have them going off to this tiny undiscovered place, which was just like Lindos was when they went there all these years ago.
And I think what you really convey is that real issue about tourism. Zanthos has, over tourism, and then Kyri has virtually nothing and could do with a bit of an economic lift. And I think you capture that really well. I think it is something that is, very current of the moment.
It is, because what you found on this little island was that all their children were leaving, and because they couldn't they didn't want to do the old things. They still depend in places like that on fishing and farming, but the children didn't want to fish and farm because it's incredibly hard. So they'd disappear off to another island to be waiters and things like that, and that really was a problem. So they were trying to. They haven't got an airport, and they haven't allowed cruise ships as yet, and they have debates about both these things. Should they allow one or the other? And because obviously cruise ships they won't be anymore, will they? Perhaps after this year, maybe the problem will be solved. And in fact, we'll see whole new problems about tourism now, but we won't go down that route.
Right. I can't imagine going on a cruise ship at this moment, with all the problems they've had. But anyway, I'm sure there'll be other problems manifesting.
But it is interesting about the level of tourism that is a good level,
Yeah.
Everybody that keeps the place lovely, but still gives the people who actually live there enough to live on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such an optimum and such a balance to find the right level, I guess. So one of the other lovely things I learnt in the book was that about mythology, and you've got the Venus de Milo, obviously the inspiration, and in this book there is the search for the Venus or the Aphrodite with the apple. So what inspired you to do that?
Well, I wanted to have a statue at the heart of the book, because Milos is the home of the Venus de Milo, and the most amazing statue famous in the world probably was dug up in Milos and taken to France, dubiously, and is now on display in the Louvre. And so I wanted the story of a statue. So I went to see the head of antiquities, the classical antiquities at the British Museum, and a wonderful man called Ian Jenkins, and he said to me, "Well, why don't you do this?" And if in 25 years of being a writer, nobody has ever given me a good idea like that. And so
wow.
So it has got the story of a statue at the heart of it. And of course there is a lot of classical references in the story as well, because I think going to Greece is very different from going to Spain or Italy. I mean, Greece really is so full of myth and history, and it's sort of myth and history that's framed our way of thinking as well, a lot of our sayings. And I do think Greece feels different for that reason, and exciting. And the more people know about that, the richer their experience is, I think, when they go to it. And just not view it as a beach, but actually know what people really believed in those days. I think it was so exciting to research it. I hope I haven't overdone it.
No, I really, I mean, I love reading books where I learn, just a little bit of, new information. And I never realized that the Venus de Milo came from Milos. So, I certainly learned a lot more, and I did art history. So, yeah.
But they would tell writers to wear their research lightly. So
yeah.
That's the thing, it's fine to do loads of research, but if it kind of hits people over the head, then they're not going to enjoy it. So it has to be very much part of the story and just sort of flow along, and that's what you aim for.
No, that was absolutely I thought, the balance was really nice. And also, I think you talked about Cleftico, which I didn't realise the history behind that food.
Exactly, lovely details. Did you make it? I think food particularly is just an exciting way of coming across a culture, isn't it? And Greek food is not just moussaka, as I was trying to say, although we tend to think it is.
Yeah, no, it was lovely because I thought, when you sort of said that people weren't allowed to keep animals, and they, if they had, some food or some meat, they actually would cook it in the ground and, away from where anyone could actually spot that they'd pilfered it and were cooking it. And I just thought it was really interesting. So next time anyone eats Cleftico, buzz around.
Yes, and it is, when it's cooked well, it is absolutely delicious. Of course, you rarely get Cleftico that's been cooked 6 feet underground these days. But I remember the first I ever had some in London. I grew up in Worthing on the south coast, and came to London and had Cleftico in a Greek restaurant, and I just thought,
not the same. And you've got lovely Ariadne, who kind of goes out and collects her herbs, and for medicinal purposes. That's a lovely touch as well, I think.
Yes, it's so much fun. All these things is what makes being a writer exciting, really, is to find out these things. And when you go to a place, you find out so much new that you didn't know. I mean, when I went to Milos, I didn't know anything about these pirates, these corsair pirates.
Yeah.
I'd heard of the word corsair, but I didn't realise that they were special licensed pirates by the French government, and they were allowed to attack their enemies. So they were allowed to attack the British and the Turkish and take all their spoils and booty, and then they used to hide them in the caves of Milos, and Milos was at their HQ. So there were 5,000 people living there at one point. There's this tiny amount now, and it just, all that stuff, I didn't know any of that till I actually went to the island. So that's all very exciting.
That's incredible. It's incredible just finding out little bits and pieces like that. Yeah. So you've got 4 mature women who are revisiting a holiday, from their youth. You've got Dora, Nell, Penny and Moira. Did you enjoy writing one character or developing one character more than the others?
Well, I like the character called Nell a lot, because Nell is very practical and down to earth, and I love practical characters. While everybody else is being divas and, shooting up, being emotional and having fits, she is the one who's always practical. The part of the storyline that involves Nell is she's estranged from her daughter for reasons that are in the book, and her daughter has a baby, and the baby gets this illness called bronchiolitis, and my own daughter Holly, who is now 31 and living in Los Angeles, got that, and it's absolutely terrifying, and I sort of wanted a way of Nell, being restored to her daughter, then restoring to each other, and that happens. I don't want to give too much away, but the baby is significant in that. And I did enjoy developing the story of the other granny syndrome, because I discovered that there's a lot of this in the world. People are looking at the other granny, what's the other granny doing with the baby on Instagram, kind of thing. That was great fun to explore. So anyway, so that was a scene that meant a lot to me,
Yes.
And was hopefully successful.
And Marigold, who's the other granny, you must have had such fun developing her. And
well, my old agent used to say, "I love a good bitch," and it's still true. We all love a good bitch. Especially when they get their comeuppance.
Absolutely, yeah, no, that's true. So you use fishing huts as a central theme. Is that something that you saw when you were travelling?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, they are there on Milos. They're called Smirna or Sirma, and they are these wonderful rose-coloured fishing huts. And that's where they do keep the boat. And they have developed them. They are developing them as a tourist attraction. You see, there's a lot of reality in my books.
It's wonderful, because I really felt I've been to Greece, and you know, when you need to kind of travel and you can't, it's a lovely thing to do, to be able to travel by book. So yours has been very good for that. So,
there are a lot of boat trips on Milos, and you see all these things when you go around the island. That's so lovely. Sitting there with a glass of wine, you're looking at, you know, all these love. Oh gosh, perfect. Don't we all wish we were there?
Oh yes, it's funny old times. So where are you going to go next in your next book? Do you have any?
As a writer, you know, it's a roller coaster, you never get off. So I've already written the first draft of my next book, which is all about chateau weddings in France. Completely different and great fun. I got very interested in the topic of weddings. I suppose my children are all at the wedding age, and there's so many weddings, and they're taken so seriously, and they're Hollywood productions, and it's quite great fun. So I speak French, so I thought I'd go do one in France. Hadn't done France. And it's been great fun. So I know an awful lot about weddings, I can tell you.
In France?
in France, especially, yes.
So how has lockdown, because we're all in lockdown in this, you know, peculiar stage of life, how has that affected your writing, would you say?
Sorry, you froze a bit there. What was the question?
How has lockdown affected your
yes, I find it a very strange time. I've been very, very glad I've got a job, actually, because I think it gives you a sense of sanity and a structure. Because without that, it'd be very ghastly. Because you have to invent something to keep you sane. So I've enjoyed it from that point of view. I don't think it's been that creative. I mean, there's been lots of talk about people, you know, being able to write their first novel and everything, but I don't think the atmosphere would have really led to that particularly. But what it has led to is pulling together. You know, that has been a lovely thing to watch. You know, the sense that people are much more community-minded. So that's very nice. I love people. I mean, I think as a writer, you have to love people. I mean, I find people endlessly interesting. You know, people in the street, people at the bus stop, you know. My kids are always saying, don't let her talk to them.
Embarrassing mum, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And when as you get older, you're allowed to be more and more eccentric, which I love. You know, you can talk to people, and you know, people can't. You know, it's just a mad old mum. You know, that's fine by me. So yeah, that's where you can. I've often found lines for books that I've just overheard. You know.
Oh yes, so always earwigging, I guess, which is
it's exhausting actually. Sometimes I say to myself, "Oh, for goodness' sake, turn off your writer's imagination." And I'm forever imagining about everyone I see what their story is, and it's really wearing. And I said, "For goodness' sake, stop it!" You know.
I can imagine it just must keep on going round in your mind, but that's wonderful creativity. So thank you so much for talking to us. Looking forward to reading more about France. And in the meantime, if you need a trip to Greece, then this is a really good novel to pick up. Thank you so much for spending a bit of time with us.
It's a pleasure. I felt like I've gone back to Greece for a moment.
Brilliant. That's all it is.